Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is B. Dot the Professor to Farewell Fallen Nations. This is a impromptu session for me today. I wasn't necessarily expecting this, and I've been away for a little while, but today was an event that happened in America, the fallen nation that we live in, another mass shooting, which has become the commonplace, but this one, very different for me, especially as an individual of African descent in the Americas. Buffalo, New York, 10 people killed, 13 injured in total, 10 dead, 3 injured by a young man, 18 years old, who went in with full military fatigue into the Tops grocery store and gunned down innocent people midday before 3 p.m. Eastern time who were just simply going to buy groceries. This is, I'm not surprised by it, to be quite honest, because people of African descent are not well liked in America, and I'm not surprised when violence is done against them. And these are the kinds of things that occur that, make you very much wonder why we continue to want to even be here in the first place. I question it. I really do. We make up 12% of the population, but yet we are treated with such angst. And, the beliefs that are written in this young man's manifesto, I was able to find it online. It's very difficult. I scoured through and was able to locate not even the actual manifesto because, of course, Google likes to scrub anything from the internet that doesn't fit within the mainstream media narrative. So if you Google this shooting, you're going to find pretty much that almost the exact same information, unless you kind of go on some backdoor channels, which I was able to find a Twitter post actually from an individual that had the video, and he was able to record the manifesto through a Google Drive link. I guess he got it before. The doc is yeah.doc x /1 PDF. I don't know if you'll be able to find it, but I was able to locate it, and I read some of it. It's 106 pages. It's 180 pages actually. I read 2 or 3 pages of it, and I read some of the high level points of it. He has like a Q&A that kind of goes through and explains why he did what he did. And, what's interesting about this is the great replacement theory that's very popular among white supremacists. And you find this on things like the Daily Stormer and a lot of 4chan channels. And there is this fear that people of European descent are being replaced by others, right? Immigrants and all people of ethnic origins, Arab, African, Asian, and the like, right? And they have this great fear of that. And so, the interesting part of this that I find is there's this strange aspect of victimization, right? And I kind of want to go through some of the high level points that he said in here and kind of just have a dialogue and discussion about it, because what's going to end up happening, right, is that all you're going to hear is this should never happen. How can we in 2022 have these issues? And they're going to pretty much drown out the fact that we need to actually have a discussion and conversation about the great replacement theory itself. We need to discuss it, because if you continue to try to push these individuals to the dark corners of the web, this is what it produces. There's a part within this young man's manifesto where he talks about the fact that he wasn't necessarily a racist. He wasn't raised that way, but he was bored on the internet, and he came across 4chan channels and the Daily Stormer. He admits it in this thing, and he was radicalized by these particular ideological beliefs and perspectives. And there is a part of this that's parental negligence, that we allow our young people just to have unabated access to the World Wide Web without filtering the content that they consume, giving them phones and devices at 6 years old and just giving them free reign to go and look up and search whatever they want and be on whatever sites they so please, because we're too lazy as a society to monitor our children's activity, and we are entitled and we think that they should just be able to do whatever pleases them. and not having any monitoring, not having any vets or checks and balances of your kids' devices and what they're searching and going to their search history. It is parental negligence that not these parents are not just guilty of. We are all guilty of it. If especially if you just are allowing your kid to be on Twitter and your kid's screen time is like 8 hours a day, right? Like that's a real thing nowadays, and so that's a problem. That's a problem because here's a young man who didn't have these beliefs, but yet he is reading things, and even in the household, there's not discussion. He didn't even feel probably comfortable enough to go and talk to his parents or anyone in his circle about these ideas, because if you broach these conversations, then you're already going to be deemed a white supremacist. And this is what the Daily Stormer and the people within 4chan, neo-Nazi kind of fascist individuals, they want people, young people, to feel isolated, like they can't have a voice, like they can't share, they can't have a conversation, so that they can put them in these silos and create these individual kinds of lone wolves that feel like they have to do something because the weight of the information that they're receiving is so heavy, and they can't figure out how to solve the problems that are being presented. And they're all problems. There's no solutions. These individuals don't come with solutions other than violence and death and murder and killing, which is demonic, and it's going to send you straight to the abyss. Okay, this doesn't honor Yahweh in any way. And it's so funny to me how they a lot of times will try to say this is a just cause. And anyway, so there's a lot to unpack here, to be quite honest, and I don't know how much of it I'm going to be able to address. But I do want to address some of the high-level points that he made comments towards within this particular manifesto, and they're outlined in this way. And, the guy, he was able to access all this military equipment and fatigue. I think it was an AR that he had, or some sort of machine gun assault rifle. I think it was an AR. Like I said, I saw the video. It shows him kind of driving up, and he's literally trying to like gas himself up. He's trying to get the courage, and he says, well, I just got to go do it, right? And he steps out like he's stepping out in Call of Duty, or, seriously, like he's literally playing Call of Duty. And I think the desensitization of our ability to see death, it makes it easy to get body counts, like you're playing a video game, and that's the way he stepped out. He hopped out of the car like he was about to, like he was online, with a headset on, just kind of going through the motions. And he just was able to get himself to muster up, the fake courage, to break through to sear his conscience, to shoot this woman in a blue shirt right outside. I mean, she was loading her groceries in the car. So like I said, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, you're gonna be able to find it. I was able to locate it, and it's not for the person with a weak stomach for sure, but he pretty much shoots her right in the head, in the neck, and she drops, and then he kills the other person that's helping load the groceries in the car, and then he obviously proceeds to go into the grocery store and wreak carnage, and just stack up body count. And so listen to this. Why did you decide to carry out the attack? To show the replacers, and it refers to anyone that is of non-European descent, anyone that is what they would consider as high fertility rates, high birth fertility rates. That as long as the white man lives, our land will never be theirs, and they will never be safe from us. All right, so there's an interesting thing within this theory of the Great Replacement theory, right? Like when you make this statement of our land, okay, what are you referring to, our land? And this is the reason why I think that these discussions need to be had in an intellectual way. But the liberal left won't engage in these conversations like, the Richard Spencer of the world. They just try to kick them off of every social platform that they possibly can. They don't want to give any credence. They won't match intellect with intellect. They just say these are asinine ideas. These are stupid. Don't talk about them. Well, how else do you combat ideas if you're not able to pick the ideas apart in the perspectives or the worldviews apart with sound reason, right? Like you have to be able to do this. So let's look at that, right? Our land. Well, what constitutes European land? Okay, that's a question I'm going to raise. What constitutes European land? So we're going to keep going. Okay, just but put that placeholder in your mind, and begin to ask yourself, what constitutes European land? And the individuals that have this particular theoretical belief, they have an idea of what that is, okay? And we're going to have to see, is it valid or not? Okay, the white man lives, our land will never be theirs, and they will never be safe from us. Our land will never be theirs, and they will never be safe from us. Well, again, we don't know what European lands mean, but if it is indeed truly in possession of Europeans and they are the ones that have primary possession, the individuals that you killed at Tops don't own anything. I don't think that Tops was a black-owned grocery store. Even the neighborhood and the community, unfortunately, people of African descent in the Americas don't own a lot of this property in the places that they even reside. So gentrification is a huge deal across America. We don't even really own anything. So when you say our land will never be theirs, well, if anyone would claim ownership, it would be people of European descent because they own everything in America from that perspective. So I don't know how we can gain possession of something that we don't have any monetary rights to. We primarily are renters. We don't own a lot of business within our own community. So you went into a community where there's predominantly black people, but yet everything within that community, most likely, I guarantee you, is not owned by black people. So that in itself doesn't even make any sense where you went to go and, carry out this particular act. Okay. And they will never be safe from us. Well, yeah, again, we are 12% of the population, and we didn't get here on our own will. Like, we're not immigrants. People of African descent are not immigrants to the Americas. Some people to the Americas came here on their own volition, but the vast majority of us are sub-Saharan West African descendants, and we were brought here in chains. We were kidnapped and taken into slavery. So we don't own anything. We don't own hardly anything in America, and we are the ones that actually need to be protected from people of European descent, because if you look at through the course of human history, it has been Europeans that have ransacked the African continent, have raped and pillaged and stole and acted out violence. Like, we are not the ones that have, in a historical sense, been threatening to European lands. I don't recall any African invasions into Europe outside of Northern African and in the Moorish invasion into Spain, which is quite different than Western Europeans. People of Spanish descent are not Western European people. So you're not even within the same category of what you would consider to be white. There's never been a time in human history where people of African descent have invaded any predominantly European, Western European land. So this premise, even on itself, is just like a straw man. Like you're building a theory on things that are not even fact and real data. It's emotion and perceived. It's not reality. Okay, that's the first part of it. Let's continue. So he goes on to say, why did you carry out the attack? And this is his next point. Okay, of what his reasoning for going in and committing mass murder. All right, to directly reduce immigration rates to European lands by intimidating and physically removing the replacers themselves. Okay, to directly reduce immigration rates to European lands. So I am going to probably upset people because, again, I'm a logical person, right? So if I'm looking at European lands and what that constitutes, I don't think America, okay, the United States of America, is it a European land, or is it an occupied land, a land that's been occupied by Europeans? A European land would be Britain, Germany, Holland, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, like aren't Austria? These are European lands, correct? Right? Like, these are European lands. You would think, based off of what we would constitute somebody's territory, is where your people are indigenous of, primarily, right? Like, wouldn't that be considered your land? Is New Zealand European land? Is Australia European land? Is South Africa European land? Are the what are the islands off of the Falkland Islands off of the coast of Argentina? Are those European lands? Is the Dominican Republic European lands? Shall we continue? Like, so what? So colonization and thievery, are you saying that those are European lands as well? Those can't be European lands. Like, European lands would have to be Britain, right? Like, America is a nation of Europeans that came over here and stole land from indigenous American or Native Americans, right? Like, that is what occurred. That's what happened in history. This is a fabricated nation built of a conglomerate of Europeans, from Brits to different types of Brits, should I say, right? English, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, and then Dutch, German. Outside of that, the Germanic languages, those of Germanic descent, those tongues, because English is one of those, right? This is what America is, this European kind of Western European melting pot that was created by Europeans. But is that considered a European land? Because then again, is South Africa a European land? The Dutch went to South Africa. They're not obviously indigenous of Africa. So would you consider people that are European descendant living in South Africa, is that their land? So there's a lot of things that need to be discussed within this, right? When you make these claims to directly reduce immigration rates to European lands, I would understand that statement. Again, this aggravates you, if you're, then so be it. But I would understand that statement if this was a Brit talking about people of Arab descent moving into Britain, or people in France talking about Muslims and people of Arab descent moving into France. Because you have high immigration rates and you have Islam that has the tendency to take over whatever culture is there, especially if you have a high percentage of agnostics in an environment and in liberalism, and you don't have necessarily a spiritual belief that deters Islam from kind of taking over. And that's what you have. You have individuals from different particular sects of Islam that want Sharia law enacted in European lands. They wear full-on burqa, they wear hijab, they want calls to prayer. They want to create Islamic schools because Islam has a tendency to go into a place and take over whatever culture and subdue it. I mean, Islam itself even means submission. So go look at wherever Islam goes, that culture turns into an Arabic culture, no matter what ethnic group that person is in terms of their ethnic origin was before Islam got there. So I would understand that. I would have an understanding of that claim. Okay, because if I was, in a society that's predominantly African, I wouldn't want Europeans coming and taking over the culture and trying to make an African culture become a European culture. I think that's wrong. That's no different than somebody coming to your house as a guest, and they, or you invite them into your home, you give them access to the things in your home, and then after a month, they start telling you that they don't like, the way that what you watch on TV. They don't like the food that you put in your refrigerator. They don't like the way that, you do, what you do with your family. Then you would promptly say, well, then you can get out of my house, right? Because this is my house. And if you don't like it, you can go back to your house, or you can go to another place where it's more amicable or pliable to your belief system and the way that you want to live, right? Like, that's a reasonable request. I don't think that's unreasonable. And I think that liberals tend to shut down that particular point, which makes it very difficult to have a conversation that's rational, because I do think that there's some validity to that. But America is not that. America is not that. America was not a European land that Africans immigrated to off their own volition and their own free will and decided to stay here. And now we are, overrunning European culture. Like, that's not what's happening. Okay. That is happening in European countries like Germany and Britain and France. That's happening there. And I would say there's some legitimacy in that. And again, like, there's no legitimacy ever, justification to go and murder someone, because at the end of the day, I always will side with divine principles, and thou shalt not kill is a higher good, right? And a higher principle than any other. okay, as it relates to conduct of man. You don't take one's life. It is Yahweh who gives and taketh away. So when you become the individual who is going and taking life, you put yourself in a divine position, and for that you're going to be judged. Okay, and that's just the reality of the situation. But there is some legitimacy to not wanting somebody who is coming to your land as a guest to then request and desire for you to conform to their societal norms from their country of origin when they are a guest in your lands. That is a legitimate thing. And because we don't talk about it, this is the reason why 4chan channels and individual and white supremacists within Daily Stormer and others, David Duke and Richard Spencer, can radicalize these young white men because this is a legitimate thing to consider. But when you don't allow people to have a conversation around it, you isolate them. Okay, we have to stop doing that. It's creating more of these kinds of lone wolf situations, and we're schisming our society. Now, again, I think this is inevitable because, as you know from listening to previous episodes, I think that America is a falling nation anyway, right? But if you have a desire to change things, you better start allowing yourself to be a little thicker skinned and talk about hard things and be willing to combat hard conversations. You look at, the civil rights leaders of old, like Martin Luther King Jr., he was willing to sit down with people. I forgot the guy that goes and talks to Klansmen. Like, you better have some tougher skin and be able to have a conversation, because with conversation, if there is truth there, okay, truth is undeniable. And you're not going to be able to allow things that don't have any weight they're not going to hold water. And some of these arguments, some of them are valid, all right? But where you take those ideas or those beliefs and where they progress, that lets you know if it's a flawed ideological belief. And so, okay, again, let's continue to work through some of this. Again, he asked, why did you decide to carry out the attack? He said, to intimidate the replacers already living on our lands to emigrate back to their home countries. All right, let's talk about this. All right. Again, we just talked about the our lands thing. That is a disputed thing because America is not a European origin land. All right. To emigrate back to their home countries. This is there's so much. This is funny because this is like a very popular thing to say among white supremacists. Okay, like the go back to your country kind of a thing. I don't know if people that have that kind of racist bent have really taken time to consider the asinine nature of that stupid, ridiculous phrase. If I am a person of African descent living in the Americas, okay, I have no idea where the hell I'm from. Do you not realize that, fool? I don't know where I'm from because your ancestors took everything away, all knowledge of culture, name, patriarchy. Some African cultures were on matriarchy, and they took their mothers. They traced lineage to the mother, some to the father, depending on what tribe. The African continent, first of all, is vast and huge. There are so many different tribes. All right. Well, when we were brought here, we were given ridiculous ass European names. That's the reason why the majority of black people are named Williams and Johnson and Jackson and all of these European names, David Jackson. How is David Jackson supposed to find out where he's from? He's been mixed with all different kinds of African tribes, okay, because we weren't able to stay within our own tribes. We interbred it with one another. And then your horny great-great-great-great-grandfathers who loved, Black Thang decided that they wanted to be, super rapey and created a bunch of mixed race children because black women weren't given their bodies willingly, to white men unless they ended up becoming some sort of house servant. And then over time they were groomed in some way. So you created mixed race children. Do you see the audacity in this ridiculous statement of going back to your lands as it concerns to people of African descent living in the Americas? We have European names. That's stupid. Think about that. No one thinks about you meet a black man and his name is Kevin Johnson. Okay, well, how many white people have you met named David Okinwabe. Never, right? Because we're not perverts. We didn't go and colonize Europeans and then say, you know what, I'm going to give you my daddy's last name. That's a weirdo thing to do, man. Okay? You don't think that's weird? What kind of grown-ass man says, you know what, I want you to be called after my daddy's name? That's a strange-ass thing to do. But that's what Europeans did. And it's like that fact is lost on them when they make these kinds of statements, to go to their home countries. I have no idea where the hell I am from. I would have to take some sort of 23andMe, and even then, that's only going to give me a general idea of, the type of DNA that I have in the particular places that I possibly could be from, but I don't know my origin. I have white European bloodline in me because your horny, perverted, nasty great-great-grandfathers were sneaking into the slave quarters and bringing back women and ejaculating inside of them and creating African, babies, white European and African babies, and that then those particular people, that if they didn't, decide that they were going to just go the way of the European, then marry another white person and have a less African child, those women and men that were mixed race kids typically still mated with African people. So you have all of these different complexions of African descended people in the Americas. We have so many different skin complexions and so many different DNA makeups that it's almost an impossibility. And because you didn't keep great records of who owned what slave, we don't know what ships we came from. We don't know where we came from on the ships when we were taken and stolen. All we know is a general sense of where we are from, which is in the Ghana, Benin, Nigeria, Liberia type of an area. So going back to the home country is not even a realistic proposition, because we don't even know where our home country is. We didn't come on Ellis Island like Euro descendant people. Okay, so when you make that statement, Europeans have a responsibility to bear here, and that's one of the things that, if you listen to like Richard Spencer, he'll say, well, I don't think my people should have done that. At least he's intelligent enough to admit it. Okay, so if you want people of African descent to go back, then you need to invest in that. That needs to be something. I'm fine with that. If you want to give me an allotted amount of USD, and then I can go and get a phenomenal exchange rate so that I can go buy land, I'm fine. I don't have to be here. I don't have any allegiance and loyalty to America, so I'm fine with with immigrating, as you say, back to our quote-unquote home countries, wherever that may be. But you're going to have some skin in the game. If you want us to leave, then you need to invest in the departure. You invested in the delivery, then you need to invest in the emigration. Okay? So you can't just make these statements and say, well, go back to your home, to emigrate back to your home countries. Now, if I am indeed an immigrant, okay, and I am Nigerian bloodline, and I came, I'm first generation Nigerian, and I'm from an Igbo tribe, and I have an actual African name, and you're saying, well, I want you to immigrate well, that wouldn't be, that's emigration. Yes, I could go back, right? Okay, let's just say that's a legitimate line of reasoning. I want you to go back. All right, well, let me ask you this question. Who allowed the Nigerian immigrant and the Arab immigrant and the Palestinian immigrant and the Thai immigrant and the Chinese immigrant to come to America? Who was that? Who allowed that? I believe those are people of European descent, because last time I checked, white people run the country. They are in the majority in every single place, from the Supreme Court to the Senate to the House of Representatives to the executive branch, through all of the state and local government. The majority of people who are making laws are white people. So it's your own fault. If you want a Nigerian-born citizen individual to immigrate back to Nigeria, or a Palestinian to go back to the West Bank, then you need to stop allowing them to come over here in the first place. The ability of people of ethnic origin outside of European descendant, genetics, to come to America is the decision by white people. So you should be going to shoot up white places. You should be going to shoot up the Capitol building. You should be going to shoot up the Pentagon. You should be going to shoot up local and state and government seats where white people that you don't agree with are passing laws that are allowing immigration at this magnitude to even occur. You can't get mad at the immigrant. The immigrant is being told, come to America. The Asian Indian population is because of tech and technology, which this guy references, interestingly enough. He has this slide where he talks about black people and white people's IQ and frontal lobe cortex, which is something that a lot of white supremacists like to talk about, just the brain size and all this kind of stuff, which is unfounded science. But let's just say that's a thing. Well, then people of Indian descent are like destroying white people in terms of tech. And you're allowing it. White people are allowing Asian Indians to come over in droves, and they're occupying all the tech spaces. Well, who's letting that happen? It's not black people. Indians, from India are being permitted to come here to buy property, to eat up all the housing market. White people are allowing that. So you should be mad at yourself. Like your anger is displaced. It's not even, you're not even directing your frustrations about within the replacement theory on the right people. The replacers that you're criticizing are being invited to the country by your own people. America is still 69-70% majority white. The black population has been 12% for decades because abortion clinics strategically are placed in the majority black and Hispanic neighborhoods by white people, mind you. Okay. And funny enough, black people defend abortion clinics, which is the very strange thing because we are actually suppressing our own population and we're allowing white people to do that. But immigration and the problem with immigration is the fault of white people. Britain let all of the people from the Arab world come into their country. So did France. So did Germany. No one else did that. If European lands, as this young man says, if the people that run European lands said we don't want immigration, they have every right to do that. They could cut off. You could put a moratorium on immigration for 5-10 years. You could pass that into law. You have a majority white population. Why not do it? Why not do it? Why not put a moratorium on all immigration? That is a thing that you can pass. Not every country allows you to come to their country. There are countries that have very, very strict immigration laws that you cannot become a citizen so easily, and you can't come there to work, and you can't come there to assimilate. Arabs don't allow Europeans to come to their countries and import their culture. So you're blaming people that don't have any power. The people that have the power are white people in the European lands that you're claiming. Okay, so this is ridiculous. Like it's an asinine idea. But you can tell that that this young man never had an intellectual conversation with anyone that disagreed. And so you get groupthink mentality where everyone is just agreeing with one another. And this is the same across the board. This is a microcosm of American society. This is what America has become. Okay? You can't fathom and stomach listening to anyone who disagrees with you because you don't want to be offended. And so like even the snowflake criticism is somewhat accurate, man, because if you can't have a conversation with somebody who's been on a Daily Stormer website and be able to articulate why their positions are not entirely accurate, and if anything, they have to blame themselves because they are the ones in power. The last time I checked, America still is the world's #1 power. And NATO, the Western European Alliance, is the strongest alliance in the world. Okay? So if anything happens in the world, it is because Western European people are allowing it to happen. It is your fault. If you're worried about your population being shrunk because people of ethnic origin have higher birth rates, then it's your fault that you are allowing immigrants to come into your nations in droves. Disallow it then. That's what I think you should do. Instead of killing people, just say we don't want you here. That's a lot more palatable to hear, to be quite honest. Hey, listen, with all due respect, we like, Mexican food. We don't want Mexicans here. Just say that. Okay? We don't want a high population of Mexicans or Arabs in our land. Okay? We want to maintain our particular way of doing things. We appreciate you. You can come here to visit. You can come on vacation. We'll even give you a temporary work visa so you can help us do certain things. But at the end of the day, we would rather keep our majority population. Just say that. Like, there's no reason to go out and hide in the darkness, right? Because you know what? You're not being persecuted, white nationalist or white supremacist or however you identify yourself in whatever subsect of the culture that you're in. You're not being persecuted by black people. You're being persecuted by your own people. White people are making it hard for you to breathe and exist. And that is a fact. It's white people who are making you feel like you can't talk about these things. That's who's doing it. The replacers that you refer to in this particular great replacement theory don't have any power. White people have all the power in this particular time in human history, and they have for several hundred years. Okay? If you're going to get mad with yourselves because you're allowing this to occur. All right, let's continue to go. What did you decide? Why did you decide to carry out this attack? All right, he continues to go. To agitate the political enemies of my people into action, to cause them to overextend their own hand. Okay, there's a lot within that, to overextend their own hand. I'm not sure what maybe he talks about it later, or at some different part within this 180-page manifesto, and experience the eventual inevitable backlash as a result. Okay, to agitate the political enemies of my people into action. Into what action? Like, the only action that's going to occur is that they're going to scrub more of you away from all of anything that looks like digital communication. And it's going to create more of yous. Now, and if you think that you could go into a grocery store and kill 10 people a day, like, you're not going to solve the problem from that. It's not going to help. It's not going to help. That makes no logical sense. Like, this particular action, yes, okay, it's agitating. Okay, so you succeeded with that. All right. So I guess that for you would be a win. If that win, though, because isn't the overall goal to make sure that people of European descent are not being, quote unquote, replaced, right? Like, this is not doing that. It's not. Okay. And experience to cause them to overextend their own hand, to overextend. I guess that's what you referred to, right? That overextending this creates the race war, because a lot of people within this particular community, they want a racial war, and they've wanted that for a long time. But it seems like you should be warring against white people. Again, this is the strangest thing, because the white people are your enemy. That's who is fighting and warring against you. Your political enemies are white people. And experience the eventual and inevitable backlash as a result. Okay, and there's not much to say there. I mean, to be quite honest, like, that's just he's trying to sound smart. He's 18 years old, and he's it sounds like he's regurgitating things that he heard from someone older than him say. That's what that sounds like. He condensed this into a bullet point, and that doesn't make any sense. All right, to incite violence. All right, retaliation, and further divide between the European people and the replacers currently occupying European soil. He's stuck on the European soil thing. I guess he considers stolen land or invaded or occupied territory to be European soil. But this is not Europe. This is North America. So in order for it to be European soil, it would have to be Europe, right? Correct? Unless you are talking about territories that have been taken over by Europeans as European soil. That would make you a colonizer. And it also, too, like, how could you, as a European person, okay, go into a place like South Africa and expect to be a majority unless you kill all the people that are there? You have to massacre everyone there, because let's be honest, like, and I want to talk about this, right? Because there is a part of this that, as a Afro-descended person, that I say, Well, if I was a person of European descent, would I be concerned with being replaced? And I have to say, yeah, I probably would be. And hear me out, okay? Listen, this is the reason why I say this. If you look at the world and the makeup of the world, all right, people of Western European descent, what we call white people, because all Europeans are not white people. I really only white people are only people of Western European descent. Those are white people, all right, and they're not even Caucasians. That's a dumb made up term. They're not even from the Caucasus region of the world. Okay, so they're Western European descended people. Those are white people. Those of the Germanic tongue. Okay, if you look at that particular hodgepodge of race of people, they are, if you look in terms of DNA and the strength of that, their DNA is rather weak. Hear me out, okay? And we see this even in culture, this ridiculous thing, and I ask this all the time. So a person of African descent, male, female, has sex with a person of Western European descent, they make a baby. What does society call that child? They don't call it a white child. They call it a black child. If a white man has sex with a black woman, makes a baby, that child is a black baby. A white man, okay? White man can't make a black child. So then that means the African woman's DNA is stronger. Black man has sex with a white woman, makes a baby. We call that child a black child. Why? Because we all know that African DNA is the strongest. A African person makes a baby with an Asian. Kid comes out looking predominantly African. Okay? African with an Arab, now there's strong DNA there. But even in still, child comes to look like African. A Asian man makes a baby with a white woman. That baby comes out looking predominantly Asian. And there's outliers, of course, right? For those of you that are expecting this to be an exact science, it's not. But just look around you. Look at the majority of the people that you encounter that are mixed race people. If they mix with anything that is European descent, the child always looks more like the other. You got a white dad with a black spouse. You have a white woman with a black spouse, and those children look predominantly African American. They look African. So from that perspective alone, okay, let's just say people of African descent were as aggressive and greedy and power hungry as Europeans have been, Western Europeans have been over the last several hundred years. They're probably, and we colonized European nations. Well, there probably wouldn't be any white people left. Any, what they would consider pure blood white people. There wouldn't be any left because, first of all, people of African descent are far too numerous. The African continent is the largest. They try to make it small on the map. European people did that. They made it small. They made it look like it's more comparative in size to the other continents. When actuality, in reality, it's actually much larger than what it looks like on a map. And the amount of tribes and people groups from the African continent is vast. And if we came together like Western European people and said, let us go and colonize, the whole world would be African. Okay? And I think that we all recognize that. So, as a European descended person, do they have some legitimacy? I think they do. They do. Also, too, let's be honest, man, in America, this is getting weird here. If I'm a white person and I turn on the TV, man, I would think that everyone's in an interracial relationship. Literally every single, not every single, obviously I'm exaggerating, right, for effect. But man, there are a plethora. I mean, honestly, not every, but almost every other commercial that I watch, every other TV show that I watch, it seems like everybody in this nation is in an interracial relationship. Almost every commercial. It seems that way. So if I'm this young man and I'm going on 4chan, okay, and I'm seeing this, and then I turn on my TV, and everywhere I see is an interracial relationship, I would think that the whole nation is making mixed babies. And logically speaking, all of those mixed children look more African than they do look European. From their hair to their skin complexion. Unless you are the type of individual, there are black people out there like this, people of African descent, that don't want to be black, and they move into a predominantly white society or community, and they just abandon anything that resembles other than their skin tone. They don't even want to be black. Okay, those people end up making, like Patrick Mahomes, for example, and his family. Patrick Mahomes' daughter is white. Well, an African man can't make a white daughter. It's because Patrick Mahomes is he doesn't identify as black. His mama is white. His wife is white, and his daughter is white. He's pretty much a white guy with a tan. Okay, that's pretty much what he is, and he's chosen to assimilate into white culture. And there's a lot of mixed race people that end up doing that, right? So those descendants are gonna end up being majority European. But again, if I'm a person who believes in the great replacement theory, when I turn on the TV, I see evidence of it. Because it looks like every white person is deciding they don't want to marry anybody white. The white men are now being encouraged to date black women on every single commercial and TV show that you possibly turn on. It's like a trend thing to do now. We already, black athletes you turn on. If I'm a white man, I'm seeing, this Mandingo warrior is taking all the white women because that's all I see on TV. That's all I see in movies. That's all I see represented. Because we have this idea of what representation looks like. And it looks like let's put everyone together and make it, let's not talk about any of these hard issues. And let's not even broach the fact that maybe somebody has a problem with this. Black people and white people. It's not just white people who are annoyed that every time they turn on TV, that they see an interracial relationship. Okay? And that's the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to talk about it because everyone's afraid of being called a racist. But when I talk to black people and white people, it's a weird thing to go on TV and see, like, what? Okay, goodness grief. Like, what's going on here? Like, I know everybody's not out here just having interracial relationships. It's not like I have anything against it from the standpoint of, whoever you fall in love with somebody. Okay, that's your free will on the earth to do what you will at the time you've been allotted. You can go and choose to marry who you would like to marry. And I have people in my family. I have, obviously, for me, there's people that are of European descent in my family, and I have friends that are in those kinds of relationships, and that's fine. You do what you want to do. But again, I'm speaking from the perspective of somebody who is white nationalistic and trying to get to an understanding of, it would be a little disconcerting every time, knowing the fact that people of European descent are already, if you want to keep it real, are outnumbered from a sheer number standpoint. They are. If the entire world decided to invade Western Europe, okay, and and all of the people, millions and millions and millions of people, decided to descend on Europe and flood those places, inevitably you would have a whole lot of interracial relationships, a whole lot. Just from the sheer number of people that would be there, and male-female ratio numbers, and potential mates that one can have, okay, you're gonna have that, and then in 3 or 4 generations, you are gonna have a less European population. That is a legitimate thing to be concerned with. But again, I put the responsibility back on you. It's your fault. It's not people of color's fault. White people, for the last several hundred years, have been responsible for running the world. So if the world is going to ish, it's your fault, white people. It can't be anybody else's fault. You have all the money. You have all the power, the majority of it anyway. Not all, literal all. The majority of the money, the majority of the power, the majority of the influence. And you have exacted your will on the earth. So if whatever level of liberalism or whatever level of globalism is being implemented, it's because white people want it to be that way. So your anger and frustration And if anyone who is a part of the, 4chan space, if you know people in that space, share this with them. It's y'all's fault, man. It's not black people's fault. We didn't bring ourselves over here. We didn't give ourselves weird European names. Black people walking around, Kyle Stewart. That's weird as hell. It is your perverted great-great-great-great-grandfathers that decided they want to make another grown-ass man take his name like that's his wife. That's strange. No one else does that. Okay? And you did it in droves. No black people in America know where they came from. We can't go back to our own country. If you want us to do that, you need to help it. You need to help us. You need to pool resources together and money so that we can not only identify through testing where we're from, because you did that. You brought us over here. So help us get back if that's what you want, if that's your desire. I'm cool with that. If you want to give me 6-7-figure dollar amounts so I can go and invest in land, build a house, I will be gladly go back because I don't really care about being here anyway. White people are running the country into the ground because you can't agree on anything. So your own people are causing all of this. So I'm cool with leaving, but you're going to have to give me some aid in order to do that. And I doubt that you're willing to do that. I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. Okay? So you don't want to take responsibility for any of the stuff in the world that you've caused. This is a lack of accountability. Don't blame people of color. It is Europeans who are allowing all this to happen. Okay? So this is the last thing, and I'm gonna depart from here because this is a lot to chew on, right? But he says, again, why did he carry the attack? To add momentum to the pendulum swings of history, further destabilizing and polarizing Western society in order to eventually destroy the current nihilistic, hedonistic, individualistic insanity that has taken control of Western thought. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there, okay? He's using a lot of big words, all right? He talks about nihilistic, right, which is, this is ironic. Rejecting all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. That's nihilistic. But yet you go and commit mass murder and throw your life away. Do you see why we need to talk to these people? Stop forcing them into dark corners of the internet. Because if anybody, because you know that the demonic is all in Daily Stormer and the 4chan channels. There's nothing of Yahweh. There's nothing of God, of the Holy One anywhere in that, because Yahweh is not going to tell a man to go and kill in the name of in his name. This is the reason why I have a problem with Islam in a lot of ways. Okay? Rejecting all religious and moral. So young man, what religious beliefs permitted you to go out and murder people who you do not know? Tell me where that is written in any type of ancient text where there's a justification for murder. So you are criticizing a society for being nihilistic when you are yourself practicing nihilistic behaviors. This is ridiculous. And unfortunately, he is now going to have to sit with this level of conviction or guilt. And hopefully somebody is able to impart knowledge before he dies. If not, he is going to burn in Hades. Okay? Rejecting all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. You just believed that your life was meaningless because you threw it away over a conspiracy theory. Or I won't even say conspiracy, that's the wrong word. Over a supremacist ideological belief that has not even served you in any way. And it's also not advancing the ball forward in completing the objective of getting people of color out of European lands. It's not happening. You didn't accomplish any of it by your act. You participated in a nihilistic, unclean, demonic behavior against the same deity that you are saying that the culture that we live in has rejected. You also are a part of that. Do you see the spirit of confusion? The reason why I call this podcast Farewell Falling Nations. Everyone is losing their mind. Nobody is thinking things through. Okay? Hedonistic. Yeah, I mean, this is 100% right. This culture is hedonistic. It is very much hedonistic. Okay? It is very pleasure seeking. All right? And again, if you don't know what hedonism is, I'm going to read it. All right? Hedonistic is engaged in the pursuit of pleasure, essentially self-indulgent. Well, whose fault is it that Western European culture has become hedonistic? I don't think that it's black people or Arabs leading the LGBTQ plus community forward and putting rainbow flags on everything. And I don't think that people of African descent and people of Arab descent are the leading producers of pornography. I don't think that people of African and Arab descent and Asian descent are the leading traffickers, sex traffickers, consumers of child pornography, makers of child pornography. I don't think that black people and Hispanic people and Arab people made sites like Ashley Madison and Tinder and Grindr. I don't think that people of ethnic origin made any of those things. I don't think that it's black people that are putting LGBTQ plus concepts and themes in children's movies, in children's books, in mainstream movies. Putting two dads and two moms. You talk about pleasure seeking. I don't think that it's black people and Arabs, especially not Arabs, because Arabs are super conservative. And people of African Americans are actually very conservative too, despite what the mainstream media will try to lie and propagate that we're like this group of liberal people, which is not the case. So you talk about hedonism around the world in European lands. It is Europeans who have abandoned Yahweh. Who is pushing atheistic and agnostic thinking? It's not Arabs. It's not Africans. It's white people. White people are pushing atheistic worldviews and agnostic worldviews that lead to moral relativism and lead to hedonistic behavior and lead to concepts like do what thou wilt. Last time I checked, Aleister Crowley was a European. The Book of the Thelema was a European crafted document. Okay? It is people of European descent that are spreading hedonistic ideological beliefs throughout the world and practices. It's not people of Arab descent. People of Arab descent, they'll stone you for homosexuality in their lands. Not so in European lands, though. European lands are the place where you go to be a heathen. You go and fill yourself with the fat of the land. You talk about hedonism, where are the fattest people on earth? The most consuming people on the earth are people of European descent. Western European, white people's lands, as you would say, are the places where you go to overindulge. It's the places where there's the most luxury. It's the places where there's the most materialism. This is the land that you have created. You have the audacity to be mad at people that you're calling replacers. The replacers are not making European lands hedonistic. It's Europeans that have abandoned Yahweh, that have abandoned the Most High God, and have chosen their own will over the will of Yahweh, and have chosen to worship and exalt themselves, and to have exalted the European intellect over divine principle. That's not people of color doing that. That's Europeans doing that. Do you not see that? I mean, come on. Like, we have to have real conversations here. Again, people of European descent rule and run the world. If the world is going to hell in a handbasket, look yourself in the mirror. It is not the fault of people of African descent, of Arab descent, of Hispanic descent. It is, quote unquote, white people, as you would say. It's your fault. It's your fault because you're allowing all these things to happen. Individualistic insanity that has taken control of Western thought. Individualistic insanity. You know what? He's not wrong, man. He's not wrong in this statement. Okay? There is an insanity of individualism that's taking over this particular space and time. Just look around you. Look at the decay. of the society that we live in. People are so selfish, self-centric, me-centric, berating each other in public, berating your local barista at Starbucks or whatever coffee shop or service level people, shooting each other on the highway because you can't control your emotions. Me all the time. He's not wrong in that isolated particular point, right? But this is the problem, again, I have with mainstream media, especially the liberal media, is that they won't even say that anything within a particular worldview or a belief system is valid. It's all wrong. And that's just not the case. You can always find a nugget of truth in everybody's perspective. Now, that doesn't mean that the actions, the fruit that it manifests is going to be something that you approve of. But from a intellectual perspective, there is always a nugget of truth in everything that you discuss. It's very few and far between where somebody is just has no valid points at all whatsoever within their argument at all. Okay? Even a broken clock is right 2 times a day. Okay? So when you look at the individualistic criticism in the insanity that he calls it, that is taking control of Western thought, he's right. But it's not the fault of Arabs or immigrants, because immigrants are leaving their own lands to come to a nation that doesn't necessarily even want them to be here, that is hard as hell to assimilate into, to make money in. That's the reason why most cultures create their own autonomous communities where they have their own banks, they have their own grocery stores, they live amongst each other, because it's easier than it is assimilating to American culture, and they don't agree with the very hedonism that you're criticizing. Why do you think Asian parents don't want their kids hanging out with American kids? Indian parents don't want their kids. African parents, indigenous African parents that are not African American don't want their kids hanging out with American kids. Because Americans around the world are known to be selfish, self-seeking, overindulgent, hedonistic. And when people think about Americans, they don't see brown-skinned people. They think about white people. So if you got anyone to blame for the hedonism and the individualism and the moral relativism and the nihilism and the decay of the fabric of ethics, it is yourself. It is not people of color. Okay? So, again, this had to be said. I needed to make sure that these points were made. I know it's hard, man. You know, guys, like, again, farewell, fallen nations. You know, if you haven't subscribed, please do. I'm sorry that I haven't been. I was individualistic. Honestly, I was selfish. I've got things going on in my own finances, my own life. I got things going on. It's like, you know, I haven't recorded in a while, right? And things get busy, you know, and I do this not because I'm making money off of it. I do this because I feel like there needs to be a voice. And I feel like the cancel culture in this country is canceling people to the point to where they do what this young man did. He goes out and says, I'm just going to throw my life away because no one will listen to me. We have to stop this. All right? We got to be able, you got nutcases jumping on stage with Dave Chappelle, you know, it's weird, man. You got to be able to have a conversation. You have to be able to have hard discussions about things that make you uncomfortable. It's in the places where resistance where you grow, right? There has to be dialogue, all right? You got to be able to look somebody in their face and say, I don't agree with you, but I don't hate you as an individual, okay? I think that your perspective on that is really dumb, actually, and this is the reasons why. Now, we don't ever have to be friends, but at least maybe I gave you something to think about, all right? And if we would just engage in more dialogue and conversation, we could avoid some of these things from happening. But now we're going to go into this new cycle of all we're going to talk about is there's no place for racism. There's no place. We got to stomp it out, stamp it out, stamp it out, stomp it out. Like that's all that's going to be. And there's going to be no dialogue. And the people of Daily Stormer, that because this young man referenced their site, 4chan is going to get shut down and And Daily Stormer is going to get taken off. They're going to lose whatever service providers they have. Their domain's going to get stripped, or, from their hosting service. They're going to find another place to go. They're going to get further down to the dark web. And kids that are being unmonitored, and they're on Tor browser, and they're on the Onion, and they're on DuckDuckGo, they're going to find it. Google, doesn't matter if Google scrubs things from the internet. You can still find things, okay? The internet doesn't just exist within Google, in Safari search engine. If you're internet savvy and you understand how to find things, I was able to, just with a little bit of my knowledge, find the video, just from a little bit of scouring and knowing where to go, knowing where to poke around, okay? You can't scrub everything. You can't scrub everything and all things that you don't want to hear, you don't like, everything that makes you uncomfortable away from your purview, or from your particular sphere of my mind is now kind of exhausted now, but you guys know what I mean. You can't scrub everything from your world and not deal with it at all, and just wait to an election cycle to hate each other. It's ridiculous. We have got to, as a society, if this society is not going to fall, if you have a desire for it to be saved, then you're going to have to be able to have tougher skin. You're going to have to read more. You're going to have to turn off your damn phone and stop consuming entertainment all day long and going into your own little individualistic silo, because this kid is right in that regard. People are so consumed with themselves, and I forgive me for disappearing for a few weeks. I wasn't just able to do it, and I didn't feel like it was going to be the best thing to do. I wanted to record in a certain type of quality and submit it, but I felt like this needed to be said. So, again, please don't get sucked in to anger and vitriol and more of the same, because that's what this kid wants. He says it, okay? I'm going to read it again. He wants to destabilize, okay? He wants to incite violence and retaliation and further divide between people of European descent and people, quote-unquote, replacers currently occupying European soil. All right, so if you go out and you just draw the line, I draw the line now, and you just run your mouth on social media without saying, you know what, if you're going to go hop into 4chan, if you're going to go hop onto someone's Twitter page, go there to have a discussion, not to name call and be condescending and be demeaning and talk trash to people. It's ridiculous. We are creating more division. All right. And listen, I'm going to tell you, man, it makes no difference to me. Right. Because I've already told you in previous episodes, you go back and listen to them if you don't know. I don't have any allegiance to America. I'm trying to help y'all out. All right. I'll go live wherever Yahweh has me live. And I believe that I'll prosper, that he will bless the works of my hands, because I'm not bound to man's, societal issues like that in that regard. I'm here as a traveler, and that's pretty much what it is for me. I'm trying to help people awaken, unlock your minds, because if you get sucked into this vacuum, you're going to end up like this guy in some way. You may not go out and kill some people at a grocery store, but you're going to kill people in your mind. You're going to kill relationships. You're going to kill conversations. You're going to kill opportunity for you to get to know somebody else, because you refuse to listen to anybody else outside of the people that tell you what you want to hear, that satisfy your itching ears. So, I don't know. Well, as things develop, I may pop back on and talk about it again. But again, if you didn't know, breaking news, of course, this just happened today. Buffalo shooting. Guy goes in, he kills 10 people, 3 other were injured. He put a manifesto online. And it's tragic. It's very tragic. But no cool intro, outro music today. This is B. Dot, the professor. Farewell, falling nations. And I'm out.